Hi guys! Or hello again if you were just over in the transcript reading for the Daubert hearing for Marissa Viverito. If you weren't there, hey, for the first time, we have action in the court.
Court come to order.
Here we go, you guys.
Everybody can be seated.
Oh, we got a squeak!
First things first, Miss Sylvia and Mr. Byron, if you all could both please come up to the podium.
Uh-oh.
Yes, please, thank you.
Uh-oh.
All right, so for both of you, I am sorry to have to say this, but I am going to be entering in order modifying each of your Rule 22s. It has come to my attention and I have confirmed that each of you has been recording in the courtroom while I have not been on the bench, and that is a clear violation of Rule 22.
Yikes.
And so you may record today's proceedings, but after today, if you want to record, you're going to have to do it from the media room. You may be in here in the courtroom as a spectator without any recording equipment, or you may be in the media room to record, but no more with your equipment in the courtroom because y'all have both recorded things that you're not supposed to be recording based on Rule 22. So I'll enter those orders today. Thank you. All right. It is my understanding that we have a plea to be tendered for Mr. Nichols.
Here we go, Nichols plea.
All right.
Your Honor, may we approach?
You may.
All right, so first plea is Nichols. First and maybe only, but... And they're approaching. So this would be for Quamavarvious Nichols. And interesting that this all kicked off because someone read a hashtag that said free Quay, and there might be a free Quay as part of this deal. We will be able to read it once it's filed. They might read some of it out loud in court so we can get some more of the details. And there's going to have to be a ton of instructions on how this can move forward because now the jury is going to notice that somebody else is not in the courtroom. So... And then approach for what? They don't want his plea streamed? Yeah, I'm not really sure. But yeah, definitely interested in seeing the conditions. Also, big shout out, this live chat has been running. We didn't have court yesterday. It's confusing because Law and Crime's calling this day 152. They tried to call yesterday day 152. But Thursday, when we never had court, that was day 151, or it would have been. So we never really had a day 151. But this live stream chat has been running for a while. So big thank you to a lot of gifted memberships here from FFS who had dropped 10 and then another 10. So 20 slimes. If you guys can drop some umbrellas in the chat. Big shout out to FFS. And this was like, it says 1:01 p.m. I think this was yesterday. So lots of greens waiting for this to start. We arrived early. So big thank you to FFS. This is your excuse to say FFS in the chat. And to be clear, you guys, we're not getting cut out because that was a modification of a Rule 22 for two parties, two individuals. But, they still have the camera feed here. So we're not all the way kicked out. And Ray got it right. Oh, FFS. All the love here for FFS. Thank you, guys. One happy white girl, this was yesterday, said good morning, slime chatters. Same thing, Miss Kim's with the positivity, but it was yesterday. Good day, I'll keep those positive thoughts coming. Gotta keep it going today. Miss AB all says, what a dry day without cat, mods, and chat. Happy Monday. We're going to carry this happy over to Tuesday. I hope that everyone had a great weekend. Wisened Up Poet became a member. Thank you so much. And I think this is better suited for today, Miss AB. We're going to hang this up here. Miss AB says, wow. Is today the end of the madness we ask for? It looks like we're getting an end of the madness a little bit for Nichols, right? He might still have to take the stand. But yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious, so Jason, Shamel Drink's family members being there at the courtroom, if they're able to give some type of statement, I'm curious what that would be. Because it seems like one family member, at least one family member, doesn't feel like the investigation gave a outcome that they're confident in. So and I think interesting, so Shayna, let me move my face, I'm like hiding myself. Shayna says the way that Whitaker said that about Sylvia and the guy was as if she expected the trial to resume. We're gonna have to see. Oh man. Guys, I think, they initially said, hey, we don't know if we'll have court on Monday, but we told the jury be ready to come back on Tuesday. Clearly that's not happening today. I doubt the jury is going to be told to come back tomorrow because it's 1 o'clock. They're at a sidebar right now for the plea deal for Quamavarvious Nichols. When the plea stuff tidies up, they've got to come up with a bunch of instructions on what they're going to do with this case moving forward, as well as address any motions that attorneys might want to file. So I don't know if they can do all that before court, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock today. So I don't know if we'll see the jury back tomorrow. So I'm very interested in seeing the logistics of moving forward. Like, how? All right, so Paige is looking.
And Mr. Harvey, Ms. Westmoreland, and Mr. Garland, who's going to be taking the lead going through the plea? Okay. All right, Mr. Harvey, do either you or you, Ms. Hilton, need this plea of guilty and waiver of rights form back?
Thank you.
Are there other defendants in the... Who's missing right now, at least from our view?
All right, Mr. Nichols and Mr. Harvey, whenever y'all are ready, you can come on up to the podium.
Mr. Harvey said he's signing the indictment.
Okay. Whenever y'all are ready.
Your Honor, I'd like my client to be present for this. He's a member of the public, and I would like him to observe this, and he has a right to be here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we get
Are you granting
Mr.
that?
Kendrick
Thank you.
out, please?
Hold on, Judge. Hold up.
Stand by.
Oh, wait, Your Honor, I'm sorry. Can we have the, yeah, can I approach?
All right, so we are waiting to read out the terms of, so we'll get to hear it out loud in court here. The terms of Quamarvious Nichols plea agreement. And Doug, and I love Doug for this, Yak wants to be out there. Diamante Kendrick has the right to be here. I wonder if other defendants will want to come sit in as well. So, because right, if I'm not mistaken, I only saw Nichols sitting out there. And remember, Nichols was ready to take a mistrial without prejudice. So, oh, they're going to recess.
We're going to recess for just a minute, and I am sorry about that, but I'm going to have to ask everybody to step out for just a minute, and then we'll let y'all back in, okay?
Here we go. They're kicking us out, guys. That might just be a logistics thing of trying to get the parties in the room. Another day, you guys. Another day, another recess. Big shout out here also yesterday, STS had gifted 5 memberships. We didn't actually start the stream, so I wanted to show some appreciation there for those 5 yesterday from STS. Biff says, won't let us see the sausage. We want to see it be made. They are getting ready to read out the plea for Quamarvious Nichols. So, and I think at least Diamante Kendrick wants to be present in the room while this happens. I think they've got to deal with logistics of moving people in and out. But Doug did ask to approach, so I don't know if there's something that all of the defense attorneys need to hash out that they don't want the media present for. So, but they're letting the camera stay on the seal. So I'm sure there's going to be some factual acknowledgments that Nichols has to sign off on, but I can't really speculate as to how much. I mean, I don't really know who had the bigger bargaining chip. If Nichols just wanted to get out of there, he might have been willing to take any plea at this point. But at the same time, if there was a mistrial on the table without prejudice, that kind of gives Nichols some leverage, like, all right, we're not going to fight for that. It was our motion. We were the ones that were fine with it. We're not going to fight for that, so give me something good in return, right? So I don't really know how those negotiations went. I can only speculate. But he might have been able to say, I'm not going to just sit here and say that so-and-so was ordering hits and this is like the most demonic enterprise ever. So, I mean, remember, this negotiations have been going on since Wednesday evening. So, but yeah, so I'm assuming there's going to be some type of factual acknowledgement that isn't positive, but is it going to be anything different from any of the other other co-indictees that ended up taking a plea that have taken the stand already? Will it be any worse than that? I think the defense attorneys have done a great job navigating cross-examination of every single witness that got up on the stand that had a plea agreement in this indictment. So also here, Renee Stevenson earlier this morning, can you check and see if any of the guys' charges have changed? So that wasn't updated this morning, and there were no motions filed yet for the pleas, but we'll be able to check on Odyssey as time passes to see, you know. I'm assuming this will be posted before the end of the day today for Quamarvious Nichols. So we'll be able to look at that. I think we'll hear most of it read. But still, you know, sometimes seeing it on paper is a bit easier to follow than hearing it out loud. Lucia, this is how it works. I started working and now they come on. Yep, that's the timing. That's how it goes. And then Mel BJW, or maybe it's Melb JW, gifting 10 memberships. That is very generous of you. Let's show Melb some love. Yeah, and also just toggling over here while we have the seal up. I'll cut back right away if they say anything. But Doug had posted what seems like they're rejecting the plea. In my opinion, my read of it. Our client, Diamante Kendrick, has been wrongly accused and incarcerated since May of 2022. We continue to fight for his freedom so that he can go home to his family and support system that all love him very much. He appreciates all the love and support from the public, whose words and deeds have helped sustain him through these many long months. So, I guess this could be interpreted any other way. We continue to fight for his freedom could include taking a plea to get him out so he can be free. But I read this as maybe they're going to keep it going. They're going to stick it out. So, up to interpretation there until we hear for sure. Also, big shout out again to Mel. STS says, free the jury, where is Johnny Rico? Who is John Galt? Man, listen, the Rico is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The Rico's getting smaller. And I get that this is a little bit different, but I still like to think back to that lump of plea deals that was handed out like Halloween candy in December of 2022 for individuals that were deemed too dangerous to get a bond. Right? You just keep whittling people out. And eventually the Rico that's big, bad, and dangerous is just going to be 5, then 4, then 3 sitting in the courtroom. I don't know. Chloe Alberts Event says, I want to know about Hilton's plea deal. Did they move her desk into the wheelchair access bathroom stall or what? Did they move her? Hold on, did they move her? Or do you mean where they have her sitting and hanging out to talk to people? Like when... Was it Woody that said she was just standing there in the back of the room? Oh, man. I don't know, every time I see, occasionally, and I don't know if the chats block it, but sometimes you see like the bottom of somebody's head run across the bottom of the screen here, and I always think we're back, and then we're not. Let down. Mrs. R, good to see you, says, Kat, even after this trial is over, you are stuck with me. You are an amazing if soul. So I don't know what if is. But this is very nice regardless. Mrs. R, I feel the same about you, especially I've gotten to know you hanging out in other chats for many months now. So really happy that you'd say that about me. The feeling is mutual. Plenty of other cases to pay attention to. Again, I know there's a swath of people that in the Delphi case that think, you know, it should be a clear guilty conviction. But I've been tuning into the day-by-day trial recaps, largely through Andrea Burkhart, who's been in person in the courtroom. And some of the stuff about their investigation is just shocking to me. You know, the investigator said that he's an expert in body language. and deception. He can tell when someone's being deceptive. Well, how can you do that? Well, the example he gave for Richard Allen, the defendant, is, well, he touched his face. So that's a sign of deception. Yeah. Well, what's your basis for saying that someone touching their face is a sign of deception? And his answer was that he heard it from somebody once. And like, this is the guy investigating and interviewing this man, Richard Allen, to try to work backwards and find a fit to solve this case of a gruesome killing of 2 girls, potentially more than the 2 girls. I'm an expert in deception, and the man touched his face. Like, hello. So there are, there's a lot out there to talk about. And again, I like to follow some stuff. If I'm streaming the court days, sometimes I feel like I'm missing things by not being able to, like, sometimes I'm looking at the chat. So being able to tune in and listen to, it took me a while to get caught up on the Delphi stuff, because Andrea's streams have been 4 to 6 hours long to recap each day, and they've been doing Saturday court since the jury is sequestered. But man, just trying to take in the information and realizing doing this YSL stuff every day eats a lot of time. I'm out of touch with stuff. But there's so much else out there that I'm interested in, or that, quite frankly, pisses me off. Like, just crazy. And I think it's really important, the work that people are doing. This channel started, I really wanted to look at stuff that wasn't televised. With the Jonathan Majors trial, which was a smaller case. It's in New York, so no cameras in the courtroom. We looked at the transcripts there. And I would have had a very different opinion of what was going on if I just followed the initial report of the arrest. And then reading the transcripts of testimony, it was like, all right, you've got the only witness saying he was doing nothing, she was doing everything. Like, you don't really hear that stuff in the news reported, and you don't have a camera in the courtroom. So transparency is a huge issue, obviously, with Delphi. That's why people like Andrea are going into the courtroom and sitting there in person, and very thankful for them that they're doing that. No matter what the outcome, no matter what the actual truth is behind a case, I always think that the process should be fair for the accused. If it's not a fair process for the accused, then I don't know how you can be confident in the outcome and think that it's justice for the victims either. So, and that's when I say that, I'm speaking generally. I don't really like to, if a family member is convinced that somebody is guilty and they're emotional because of it, my concern is not really someone's emotional feelings about something. My criticism is towards the process, the system itself. So, yeah, and Jamila, this is a great point. The more people start watching trials on YouTube, the more they're going to learn that this is not new, that corruption's the norm. And I was sitting there thinking, like, all right, next time I get called for jury duty, the last time I called and they never actually needed me to come in. But if they ever call me for jury duty and I go in there and they're like, do you do a YouTube channel on true crime? Which I don't really consider myself interested in true crime. I like the legal stuff, the filings, the arguments a little bit more than the solving a cold case type thing. But I'm like, they're gonna be like, strike them. But then I was thinking about how many thousands and millions of people are tuning in to watch cases more regularly. Some people are saying it's more interesting to them than watching television. And I wonder if, like, little by little that could kind of inform people who would make up a jury pool a little bit more about the process. I have a big concern that people see a police officer in uniform on the stand and might take what they're saying as inherently more credible, authoritative, that they did their work. This is their job, and what they're saying, it's because they investigated and verified and corroborated things. Just this favorable assumption out of the gate when someone of a certain stature is giving testimony. And you just assume that. We think that jurors might have that assumption. That's a huge hurdle for the defense to get over. But at the same time, when I think about people like you in the chat, there's more people that are watching this stuff that might sit in a jury box and say, You know, I don't really know if I can just take an officer in uniform at face value when they talk about the quality of their investigation and the steps that they took. And I think the overall reach and interest in live trial streaming can kind of change the landscape of what we see from jury pools. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic. And, you know, sometimes things like sit over here and then the needle gets moved over here and maybe it goes too far. And then it like ends up finding like a equilibrium, homeostasis eventually. And then I always like to check how long. Are we gonna do like a quick recess? We are like 15 minutes into this recess here. So there we are. Also, and oh, we're moving. No, are we moving? You know how this camera does sometimes. And STS also says, what I fear is that I'm responsible in a small way for some of the delay, because with your analysis on some of the issues with the plea agreement, without any search engine indexing, got a spike right after you emailed it to a law firm. And what I would say here is, even though, from my understanding, you didn't email it to, you may have, I think you said the merchant law firm. I don't know if you emailed it to the attorneys sitting in this room, but I would imagine scorched earth, playing with fire, the state walking into plea negotiations, when these attorneys are well aware of how dirty some of the other pleas were and have been, right after Munktunks was revoked, 5 years. I think any delay here just would mean stronger negotiations for these plea deals. And I think highly, I really do think highly of the attorneys in this courtroom. I know the decision is ultimately their clients at the end of the day, but I also think the clients entrust in their attorneys, so would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in these negotiations. And I think if they needed the time to negotiate, fine by me. Out of Scope shares, sat on a trial a couple years ago and watched an expert witness just completely BS testimony on something that I am a subject matter expert. Infuriating. Now, did either of the parties ask you about this during voir dire? I mean, did your occupation come up? Did they make the connection and choose to keep you? Like, not strike you? Maybe they thought, they just assumed that you would go right along with the expert witness? Oh boy, this is hilarious, and it's like, that's crazy, but it also doesn't surprise me, if that makes sense. Okay, so it wasn't asked specifically, and was your career prior to this one? Interesting. I really like jury selection stuff, because I think it's like, I don't know, you gotta figure out strategically what questions to ask. And you don't want to ask questions that are too obvious that like a slick potential juror that really wants to get on the case for the wrong reasons. You don't want to ask questions sometimes in a way that they're obviously going to know how to manipulate their answer to fit what they think you want them to hear. So I think it's a really cool process. And it's like fiction loosely based on reality, but the show Bull, I think, is really cool, all about like the trial science and jury selection. Like really cool series, fictional of course, to watch. Oh yeah, see? There you go, Blissful. Great minds think alike. There we go. And lots of seasons. It got really dramatic towards the end, but whatever. You gotta do what you gotta do. But really interesting, thoughtful stuff. Even, what was the one character's name? He started out as like the wardrobe guy. They hired their trial science firm, hired a wardrobe person just to help the defendants and sometimes even expert witnesses get dressed up in a way that would give a better perception to the jury. And in the story, his character like was so into the work that he ended up going to law school and becoming a trial attorney himself. So really cool little mini stories within that series, within Bull. Chunk, yeah. There you go. It was like there. I was like, I know it was like a nickname. So Lady Y, Nichols took a plea, but we are waiting to, I don't know if they're moving defendants who want to hear it inside the courtroom, if it's a logistics issue. The next thing we're supposed to be doing is, you know, hearing the plea. So. All right, so Harvey doesn't want, that's understandable, I can imagine. So this is all I've got here, is that it's just a readjustment of the courtroom, nothing major. So musical chairs, logistics there, you guys. So I don't really know if other attorneys raised any objections, but and then also, generous as always, STS with the support. And if you guys were watching our transcript reading of investigator / gang expert Marissa Viverito, my Spectrum was conking out again. You've heard me have Spectrum issues after the hurricane passed through. And today it decided, I guess it was being slow. You guys said it was lagging. So I was able to switch over to, I have two internets. I have a backup 5G internet. Thanks to the suggestions of those in the chat and the support. So big shout out to people like STS who made it really easy for me to just go and say, you know, the streaming sucks with Spectrum. Let me get a plan B. So thank you to STS for the support
All right,
and for also
apologize
gifting
for the
10.
interruption. Thanks for y'all's patience. Some of the co-defendants in the ongoing trial wanted to be out here, so they are out here now. And Mr. Harvey, are we ready with Mr. Nichols?
Yes.
All right.
Do you want him at the podium or do you want him here at seated?
I think at the podium, please. Thank you.
Okay, so like everyone's out here.
I think that's on. Thank you.
Now let's have him at the podium because he's going to have to take an active part in this entry.
Here we go, you guys.
All right.
Okay, sure.
Sergeant, can you swear him in, please?
Raise your right hand. So I firm testimony you give today, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
All right. State, spell your first and last name for the court, so now into the mic, please, sir.
Quamarvious Nichols, Quamarvious. Last name Nichols, Nichols.
Did you get that, Jack? Okay. Do you want to do it again? All right, slow down. Your name. Spell it for this young lady right here.
Okay, my name is Quamarvious Nichols. First name Quamarvious. My last name Nichols, Nichols.
And Mr. Nichols, are you the same person referred to as Quamarvious Nichols on indictment 22 SC 183572?
Yes.
And are you at this time taking or under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine?
No.
Have you had the opportunity to sign this indictment with your attorney, Mr. Bruce Harvey?
Yes.
How old are you?
29.
And how far did you go in school?
I got my GED.
I did not hear you.
I got my GED.
Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Do you understand that in this indictment, you were initially charged with count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, which carries a sentence of 5 to 20 years. You were also charged with count 49 in this indictment, which is murder, which carries a sentence of life. You were charged with 2 counts of participation in criminal street gang activity, which was counts 50 and 51, which each carried a sentence of 5 to 20 years. You were initially charged with counts 53 and 65, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon under Code Section 16-11-133, which each carried a sentence of 15 years consecutive to count 1. And then you were also charged with count 54, which is possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, which carried a sentence of 5 years consecutive to count 1. Do you understand that is what you were initially charged with?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to these charges? And if you plead not guilty or remain silent, you may receive a jury trial.
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to go over and review the waiver of rights form with your attorney?
Yes.
And I'm going to hand this to your attorney. Did you sign this along with your attorney?
Yes.
Have you had enough time to speak with your attorney, Mr. Bruce Harvey, about all of the facts and circumstances known to you regarding the charge in this indictment?
Yes.
Do you need any more time to discuss this man with your attorney?
No.
Are you satisfied with his counsel and representation?
Yes.
And I'd include in there the counsel and representation by Ms. Westmoreland and Mr. Garland as well. You had a team of attorneys.
That's correct.
All right.
And they are all attorneys of record and have participated in this particular proceeding and negotiations leading up to this proceeding.
Thank you.
Do you waive formal reading of the indictment?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you waive any and all defects with respect to the indictment?
All right.
Yes.
They're not doing
Have
the,
you been arrested on all the charges in this indictment?
Yes.
And Mr. Harvey, the state is unaware of any outstanding warrants related to these charges. Do you know of any outstanding warrants that are related to these charges?
Not related to those charges.
Have you been advised of the minimum and maximum sentence for each charge that you are pleading to?
Yes.
Do you understand this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means that the state will recommend to the court as to count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, a sentence of 20 years to serve 7 years in custody, balanced on probation?
Yes.
Do you understand as a part of the negotiated agreement, the state will null, pros, or dismiss count 49, which is the murder count, count 50, 51, which are the gang activity counts, count 53, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, count 54, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and count 65, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Do you understand that is the negotiated agreement?
Yes.
Do you understand that the court does not have to accept that recommendation?
Yes.
And the court can sentence you to the maximum on each charge and can run those charges consecutively or one after the other?
Yes.
Well, there's only one charge that
so I-
a guilty plea is
I
being
listened-
entered into, so
Under my breath to that.
there's no other sentence to run anything consecutively with regard to this plea. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you understand this plea may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction as well as in other jurisdictions, including the federal courts?
Yes.
Do you understand if you are currently on probation or parole, your probation or parole may be revoked based on your entering a guilty plea today?
Yes.
Do you understand if you're placed on probation of any kind, you cannot violate any criminal laws of any governmental unit or any special conditions of probation without being subject to revocation for the balance of your sentence?
Yes.
Do you understand you are not allowed to possess or use a firearm while on probation?
Yes.
Do you understand if you are not a United States citizen, a guilty plea conviction will affect your immigration status and will result in deportation, just like a conviction at a trial would, and that is true regardless of being advised by your attorney or anyone else?
Yes.
Do Do you understand that neither the court, your attorney, nor the district attorney's office has anything to do with parole, the Department of Corrections, or Board of Pardons and Paroles, and no one can guarantee parole no matter what anyone has told you?
Yes.
Do you understand that there may be other adverse or unfavorable consequences as a result of this guilty plea conviction, just as there would be from a conviction following a trial? For example, your guilty plea may affect your right to vote, your right to hold public office, your right to serve on a jury, your right to obtain a passport, your right to receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or the ability to obtain employment.
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a felony, if you use, receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or use a firearm in a crime, you'll be guilty of a felony, which may carry a sentence of 1 to 15 years in prison?
Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses, including any mental health defenses, by entering a plea of guilty?
Yes.
Do you understand if you went to trial, you have the right to a trial by jury, the right to see, hear, and confront witnesses called to testify against you, and the right to testify to remain silent and not incriminate yourself?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are giving up the following rights? After each right, I'll ask you to say yes or no if you understand. The right to a trial by jury,
Yes.
the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself,
Yes.
the right to confront witnesses against you,
Yes.
the right to assist with counsel hired by you or to court-appointed counsel if you cannot afford an attorney at the trial of your case,
Yes.
the right to the presumption of innocence,
Yes.
the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence,
Yes.
the right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence,
Yes.
the right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt,
Yes.
the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after a trial.
Yes.
Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea?
No.
Is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea because you're in fact guilty?
Yes.
With respect to indictment 22 SC 183572, how do you plead to count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act?
Guilty.
Is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with a full knowledge of the charges against you?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have only a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have 4 years from today's date to file a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness of this plea?
Yes.
And that can challenge anything about the constitutionality of the plea. It's not limited to voluntariness, understand?
Yes.
And Your Honor, if this case were to
Hang on just a second. You also have, so 4 years for that to file a direct appeal. You have 30 days from the date of the sentencing, which is going to be today. And you have until the end of this term of court to file a motion seeking to withdraw your guilty plea. That doesn't mean anything like that would be granted. You would have to establish facts that would warrant that. But that's just the time period is until the end of this term of court. Do you understand that as well?
Yes.
All right.
Your Honor, if this case were to continue with trial, Your Honor, the state would expect, as to this defendant, the state would expect to show that what has already come into evidence that on July 3rd, 2017, as well as October 23rd, 2018, that this defendant is an associate of the enterprise of YSL, also known as Young Slime Life, and that he conspired to associate together with others for the common purpose of illegally obtaining money and property through a pattern of racketeering activity and conducting and participating in the enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. In furtherance of the conspiracy, this defendant engaged in the activities below. He engaged in activities that assisted with preserving, protecting, and enhancing the reputation, power, and territory of the enterprise through acts of racketeering activity to include murder, assault, and threats of violence. That this defendant preserved, protect, and enhance the reputation, power, and territory of the enterprise by the posting of messages, images, appearance in videos, and songs demonstrating allegiance to the enterprise and a willingness to engage in violence on its behalf, and to obtain money, weapons, and other property through acts of racketeering activity, including the unlawful sale and distribution of drugs. Your Honor, evidence has come in during this trial that on July 3rd, 2017, Mr. Nichols was located at 2612 Steel Avenue, which is in the Cleveland Avenue sector of the city. Your Honor, he was found inside of a vehicle. When that vehicle was searched, Your Honor, this was in October of 2018, they found marijuana as well as sandwich baggies that would be used to package drugs, and there are also guns found inside of that vehicle. Also in July of 2017, this defendant was stopped during a traffic stop in the Cascade area, Your Honor. After being stopped, Your Honor, there was a consensual search of the vehicle that yielded powder MDMA, Xanax, as well as a loaded gun inside of that vehicle. Additionally, Your Honor, in July of 2019, Mr. Nichols was featured in a video with another YSL member, Shannon Stillwell, and Winnie Lee. In that video, it was entitled Slap Talk. And in that video, co-conspirator Shannon Stillwell, while performing, makes such quotes as, "Me and my slimes are above the law." We know from the evidence that slimes is one of the terminology used by members of YSL to refer to themselves or other members of this enterprise. And then last but certainly not least, Your Honor, that in March of 2022, Your Honor, Mr. Nichols was found in surveillance video at a gas station at Windsor Street and Fulton Street here in Atlanta, Georgia. This was on March 14, 2022, during what the state would believe to show an onset of a gang war that really started in 2015 with the death of Donovan Thomas, but carried on into 2022. In February of 2022, a rival gang member by the name of Rayshawn Bennett, also known as YFN Lucci, was stabbed at the Fulton County Jail in February of 2022. Information about that stabbing was made public at the early part of March 2022, around March 3rd of 2022. Once that information was released to the public, there was an onset of retaliatory activity that occurred between March 3rd, 2022 and March 16th of 2022. That includes a March 11th homicide of YSL associates Christian McMiller and Darius Ford. It also then included a retaliatory shooting of a YFN associate, and then ultimately it led to a murder of Shamel Drinks, who we believe is a YFN associate. This murder occurred again on March 14, 2022. Mr. Nichols is seen on surveillance video at that BP gas station that I just referenced earlier. He was at the gas station with YSL co-conspirator Shannon Stillwell. Mr. Stillwell was driving an Audi vehicle. Mr. Nichols came to that gas station in a Ford Fusion vehicle. You see both of them on camera together. While they are at that gas station, Shamel Drinks approaches that gas station as well. I think unbeknownst to Mr. Drinks, Mr. Stillwell was still in his vehicle, which is the Audi. At some point in time, Mr. Nichols got into his vehicle, the Ford Fusion. Once Mr. Drinks finished his business or finished handling business at that gas station, we know that there is a phone call between occupants of the car that Mr. Stillwell was in and occupants of the car that Mr. Nichols was in. That communication was to the effect of, you need to get on FaceTime. As soon as that conversation ensues, we see Mr. Drinks leave the gas station in his vehicle, and both the car that Mr. Stillwell is driving, as well as the car that Mr. Nichols is driving, both follow out of the gas station, following behind Mr. Drinks. Mr. Drinks proceeds down the street to the light at Windsor, which is right by I-20 in Windsor. Mr. Drinks is in the far left lane. The car involving with Mr. Stillwell pulls up to the middle lane, and Mr. Nichols' vehicle pulls up to the far right lane. This is all captured on surveillance video and surveillance camera. They are at the light for a moment. Then we see both this car with Mr. Stillwell as well as the car with Mr. Nichols drive through a red light, leaving the car with Mr. Drinks sitting at that light. About 30 minutes later, a Good Samaritan sees that car still sitting there, approached the vehicle, and Mr. Drinks is now deceased inside of that vehicle. We had know through LPR readers that both Mr. Stillwell's vehicle and the car involving Mr. Nichols drive in the direction of 20 westbound and then kind of follow in tandem. 2 days later, when after the case is investigated and arrest warrants are taken out, on March 17th, 3 days later, Mr. Nichols is found with Mr. Stillwell at a Chick-fil-A gas station, Chick-fil-A restaurant. There is a chase, I won't call it a high-speed chase, but there is a chase through the city of East Point, and eventually Mr. Nichols as well as Mr. Stillwell are both apprehended after arrest warrants were ultimately taken out for the murder of Mr. Drinks, Your Honor. Given where we are in the case, Your Honor, we know that Mr. Nichols, we do not believe Mr. Nichols was in the vehicle in which the shooting occurred, but he was in this other vehicle. The state has made the decision to move forward with this recommendation for the RICO count, Your Honor, for count 1.
Mr. Harvey, are y'all acknowledging a factual basis to the count 1, the RICO count?
Okay, we are acknowledging a factual basis. There has already been evidence with regard to the July 3rd, 2017 drug event, the October 23rd, 2018 drug event. We categorically deny and contest any use of violence by Mr. Nichols. We don't agree to that underlying factual basis. We believe those two predicate acts that were committed by Mr. Nichols without any question are sufficient to meet the elements of the offense. The offense to which he's pleaded to, which is a RICO conspiracy. A RICO conspiracy requires proof that the defendant either conspire with another person to violate one of the substantive provisions of RICO, and that would be drug offenses, or personally endeavor, I believe that's what the language of the statute says, to violate one of the substantive provisions.
Well, that's what the language of the statute says, but
Yes.
he is indicted in this indictment with conspiring, not with endeavoring.
That's correct. So we're talking about a conspiracy. We acknowledge the two events that he participated in. We categorically deny any other allegations other than those two events that are sufficient for a factual basis. We categorically deny that we participated in any way in the unfortunate death of Mr. Drinks. We categorically deny any other charges to which we are, substantive charges to which we are not entering a plea, and that includes gang charges. This is a plea solely to a conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. So but yes, we acknowledge a factual basis to that extent, Your Honor.
Understood. All right, thank you.
Your Honor, we just have one additional thing to say.
Go ahead.
The factual basis regarding the nature of YSL is that the evidence has shown and will continue to show that Mr. Nichols conspired with others to participate in Young Slime Life through a pattern of racketeering activity, and multiple defendants and unindicted co-conspirators have committed overt acts to further this conspiracy, including drug sales, aggravated assault, and murder, also including social media posts asserting the violent nature of and asserted dominance of Young Slime Life, also known as YSL. And that concludes our factual basis.
And again, once again, we categorically deny those representations. And again, the only thing that is necessary to meet the factual evidence of a 1614-4C is proof that the defendant conspire with another person to violate one of the substantive provisions of RICO, and that is subsumed by the drug offenses that have already been proven in this case, and to which Mr. Nichols has previously pled.
All right, thank you, understood.
And Your Honor, may I approach with the waiver of rights form in the
Yes.
So we didn't get to hear a reading of the factual acknowledgments. So the factual basis is pretty much the state's basis, their theory of the stuff
All right,
underlying what he was charged
Mr.
for.
Harvey, have you reviewed with Mr. Nichols this plea of guilty and waiver of rights form, which the two of you have both signed?
I have, Judge, in each individual provision in that plea colloquy has been acknowledged and gone over personally with Mr. Nichols.
All right. And Mr. Nichols, have you had sufficient time to consider this guilty plea that has been negotiated between the state and your attorneys, and to discuss anything you wanted to about that with your attorneys?
Yes.
All right. And you understand, I hope, I'm going to ask you, that it is your decision ultimately, obviously with the advice of your attorneys, but it's ultimately up to you individually to decide whether you want to enter this guilty plea or not. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. And you do want to enter this guilty plea?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Harvey, have you advised Mr. Nichols of the alternatives if he does not ultimately go through with this guilty plea, and the potential benefits and drawbacks of all of the other options?
Yes,
All right.
very thoroughly, Judge.
All right. All right, Mr. Harvey, is there anything that the defense wants to add to the record?
Judge, other than the statement with regard to the underlying factual basis, I would point out for the court that when Mr. Nichols filled out his form, it says 29 plus. He is a birthday boy in a couple of days, and he will be 30. And at 30 years of age, he has a wife, he has got a 13-year-old daughter, he's got a 10-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old son. His wife and sister, I believe, are here in the courtroom to support him. He, Mr. Nichols, was born and raised in Atlanta, and you know, we're at this point, before I have even given my opening statement in this case.
Yes, sir.
I do want the court to know that Mr. Nichols' mother died in prison. His father was shot by the Atlanta police when he was 4 years old. And he was raised by friends and family in the Atlanta area. So he has come to this point in his life from a very humble beginning, and he has sought the support of friends in this courtroom and others in this courtroom. He is an intelligent young man who I believe has a future. Every day we do a word of the day. We put a new word into a sentence. And I think this is in his best interest. I know that there is, and I know this plea is negotiated, but it's a long downside from 7 to 20. So the courts will have jurisdiction over him for a period of time. So I ask the court, given who this young man is, and given our categorical denial of some of the factual basis, to accept the plea and sentence Mr. Nichols accordingly.
Mr. Nichols, is there anything that you want to say?
No, ma'am.
All right. All right, I find there to be a factual basis for the guilty plea to the RICO count one of the indictment, that being a conspiracy to acquire control or interest in money and personal property through a pattern of racketeering activity. And that is the only count that guilty plea is being entered for. The remaining counts of this indictment as against Mr. Nichols are being null pros by the state as a part of this indictment. I find, having heard the evidence up to the point of trial right now, that there is evidence of at least one overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy, and that there is evidence that would fall within the required statute of limitations to establish this RICO conspiracy count. One of the things that we as judges are instructed by our Uniform Superior Court rules to do when we are considering whether to accept a guilty plea and whether to accept a negotiated sentence, and this is a negotiated sentence in this case, is to take into account whether giving leniency in sentencing is going to aid in ensuring promptness and certainty, or at least more promptness and more certainty with regard to corrective measures, whether the defendant, and in this case the defendant has acknowledged guilt and is accepting responsibility for his guilt of the RICO count, and whether accepting the plea will aid in avoiding further delays, not just with regard to this case, but with regard to the entirety of our system here in Fulton County. And this plea does go towards doing all of those things. I am going to accept the plea as negotiated and sentence in accord with the negotiated recommendation. As I said before, find there to be a factual basis for count one of the plea. I find the plea to have been freely, knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily entered into by Mr. Nichols with an understanding of the consequences of doing that. And the sentence on count one is the sentence that has been negotiated of 20 years to serve 7, with the balance of those years to be served on probation. And that, I don't know if there are any special conditions attached to this that y'all have talked about at all.
There are no negotiated special conditions in those, so there are none as far as I'm concerned.
All right. No. Okay. So with regard to the time that you are on probation, you need to stay out of all kinds of criminal trouble. Make this a birthday present to yourself and to your children and to your wife and family, that you will leave from here today and leave whatever you used to do behind you, and take the next few years. You know, you're going to have some years that are still to be served on this. You'll have credit for the time you've already served, but you're still going to be facing some incarceration time. But after that, you are going to be out, and you, I believe Mr. Harvey is correct, can be a productive member of society, and this is an opportunity for you to do that and for you to put your past behind you, the bad parts of it, and continue and make your children proud of you and set a good example for them, an example that I guess unfortunately you were not lucky enough to have throughout the entirety of your childhood with your parents. I'm sorry about that, but you can be the kind of parent that you ought to be to your children. So I am going to impose that sentence, and I am going to wish you luck and good fortune as you go forth from here. So I think that unless there's anything else from either party, that will conclude these proceedings, and y'all can go ahead and take him into custody. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
And Ms. Taylor will make this an exhibit to the plea. Thank you. All right, we are adjourned for the day.
So, is that the only plea at this time? They're adjourning for the day, you guys.
Oh,
Are they saying something else? All right, so I didn't see the filing yet. I mean, they've got to like sign off on everything and submit it, but we can read if there's any factual acknowledgments. Let me make the screen bigger so I can see you guys. If there's any factual acknowledgments, because what I'm getting from Bruce Harvey is, what we heard Hilton reading was the factual basis. That is different than the factual acknowledgments. The factual acknowledgments would be where you're seeing the stuff that you might want to call snitching. What do I agree is true as I sign off on this agreement? So we didn't hear a rating of the factual acknowledgments. We'll see if we can read the document, if it comes through on the docket in the next couple of minutes, or we'll go live later this evening when we see it pop up. But guys, all in all, I think this was a great deal for him. And I think it shows the weakness, and I hope you guys get this takeaway. I think it shows the weakness of the state's case. They had a mistrial without prejudice on the line, and this is one of the defendants that said, yes, we want to take that. And so he gets a null pros, a decision not to prosecute, akin to a dismissal, on every count he was facing except count 1. Conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corruption organization. So think about what he had on the line. I tried to note the sentencing, so it might not be precise, but he had, let's see, 2 counts of participation in criminal street gang activity, which each could carry 5 to 20 years. Possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, 15 years. He had 2 counts of that. And that would be served consecutively. Then he had the murder charge. He had a murder charge. So that's what he had on the line there. And instead, his deal got him 7 years, but he's going to get time served. So from what I'm understanding, he only has a couple years and then he'll be out. He'll be out of custody. And then he's got to deal with 13 years probation, which I know 13 years is a trap. But when your alternative is to risk sitting there and possibly face a conviction for all those other things, the murder, the 2 counts that carry 5 to 20 for criminal street gang activity, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, 2 counts of that, 15 years consecutive each is the potential sentencing. I think that's a sweet deal. And like, yeah, another drop murder charge. Another drop murder charge. Now, I know everyone is saying like, oh my God, this is so bad for the other defendants. Do you remember the work these defense attorneys have done on the other defendants, or the other former co-indictees that have pled out? They're now free, and they've been called as witnesses to testify in this trial. Witnesses that didn't have murder counts sitting over their head. And the defense attorneys wrapped the plea agreements around the axle. You were sitting in Rice Street. You were sitting in the Fulton County Blues. You get this plea deal in front of you after you were denied bond 4, 5, 6 times. You take the plea because you want to go home because it's Christmas time. You want to see your family. With the exception of, I think, Winnie Lee, who ended up had an Alford plea, but he had a murder charge, from my understanding. He didn't really have, and we haven't gotten to cross of Winnie Lee. What do you think the defense attorneys are going to do on cross-examination if Nichols is supposed to testify as a part of his plea agreement? What do you think these defense attorneys are going to do when they go through their usual spiel on cross-examination and you wanted to get out of this courtroom? The jury saw you sitting on this side of the courtroom, right? Now you're up here. Now you're up here. And you were facing, these were the counts, right? I think that this could be very helpful for the defense. And worst of all, it doesn't seem like Bruce Harvey, and I can't wait to read the factual acknowledgments. It doesn't seem like Bruce Harvey and his client conceded, and we'll have to see the document to actually see. It doesn't seem like they're conceding to information that helps with the Chamel Drinks murder. It seems like what they're conceding to was 2 possession charges for drugs Maybe having baggies so intent to sell, which is how it goes to RICO, like we're conspiring to sell and make money together for the enterprise. So the state didn't gain much here. And again, I have to read the factual acknowledgments. Maybe there's big bold letters there that say, yep, we did the Shamel Drinks murder. And the defense will have to get around that. But if that's not in there, this was a saving grace for the state to keep this trial going, at the concession that Quamarvious Nichols gets to get out. And this is just my guess, but null pros, the decision not to prosecute, the jury was already sat here. Sometimes you can get null pros before a jury is seated, before things actually go to trial. And double jeopardy doesn't attach. I feel like a null pros here, and I need someone from Georgia to help me out, an attorney. I would imagine that double jeopardy would attach here. How could you decide to dismiss something, not prosecute something, after trial's already started, after the jury's already been seated, and then decide down the line, you know what, we actually do decide to prosecute this? Because null pros, you could eventually prosecute. Usually null pros is done before trial starts. I think those null pros, even if there's a probation violation, which could, you know, change up some of the time served or revoke probation and put him back in custody, I don't think a violation of this plea could mean that they'll decide to re-prosecute these things they gave him a null pros on, including the murder. Double jeopardy has to attach. So, all right, so YouTube watcher says null pros holds for 13 months. So there we go. So I just think that this was a great deal. I can't wait to read it. I guess we'll have a regular court day tomorrow. I don't know if the jury will be there, you guys. This seems like there's going to be some logistics to work out. Let's see if we get an update on... Oh, no negotiated special conditions. All right, so I misunderstood that. I just interpreted from Bruce Harvey. Let me retweet this. This is... The state is... Like, if the sword is here, the state is, like, here, about to fall on it. Of course, at an angle, right? We need some gravity. My representation wasn't so good. But this is crazy. Yeah, and honorable, yeah, that. Look at this. Unless he got to testify, his plea is useless for them. This means this just kept the trial going. Which I know everyone says, like, the other defense attorneys and the defendants seem upset. I don't know. If he's not pleading against any of them, I mean, if he's not testifying against them, or testify to certain factual acknowledgments, I don't really see how this moves the needle negatively for the other defendants. I think it'll be interesting, and I can imagine, you know, there's strategy, right? You always got to play your strategy. I think these attorneys are very capable of saying, all right, how are we going to use it to our advantage that a co-defendant that the jury's seen sitting in here for 151 plus days is no longer sitting in here? How are we going to use that to our advantage? Because there's a way that the state could use it to their advantage, but if we can play the game a little better than them, we can pull out ahead. And I think they're fully capable. Guys, this does not move the needle for the state one bit. But yeah, so let's do, love all the food for thought here. Thank you again, honorable. Yeah, that. Let's do on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being good for the state, 10 being good for the defense. And for the sake of it, we're just going to say the defense in general. We're not going to limit it to one remaining defendant. Where do you sit with this? Everything that we just saw in this court proceeding for this plea. Do you think it leans good to the state, good to the defense, kind of in the middle? And we'll go through, we'll try to get a read here. We got 2 10s off the bat, 7, 5 right in the middle. 10s, 6, 8, 7, 5. Lots of higher numbers. Got a middle ground there from David. There we go. Armistead gives a 4. Some 10s, 8s. And I do really want to read it. And another good talking point here, the state's harsh treatment of Mungtung came back to bite them. Now, guys, with the plea hearing, there are things that the judge has to, you know, state out loud, right? You know, do I accept the plea? Do I accept any negotiations on the sentencing? I've got to go through what the court's supposed to consider. So some of the stuff we heard is stuff that you would hear in any plea hearing like this. But there were some interjections, some commentary, some questions from Whitaker that I think pointed to a concern of avoiding another Munktung situation, where Whitaker's saying, look, however many months or years from now, I don't want to be sitting in a scenario like we just did 2 Fridays ago with Munktung. So let's get certain things straight. I kind of got that vibe a little bit. So, and we've got a 4 here from Gerald. Yeah, most things are 5 and above. We do have a little bit, you know, a little bit helpful to the state. So. Also, Esquire, good to see you, says more can be learned from the charges dropped. Right. Right. So, like, imagine if he does testify. I mean, I don't know if that's a condition or what he has to say if he does testify. But if the defense gets to say, you know, jury, let's talk about plea deals once again, except this time, this one has a dropped murder count that they're still trying to charge on somebody else sitting in this courtroom. Oh my gosh. Like, come on. Like, just think of the craziness of that. So, I don't know. Great point here, and good to see you, Esquire. Gwen Garnett says, what do we think the jury will be told? I can't wait to hear them try to argue these instructions. It sounds like a logistic nightmare. Yep. And I think this is it. I think the state really sees this as the win. So thanks, Asiatic. State's going to try to use the RICO conviction, but he don't have to testify. So... And I was gonna say, Leo Senpei says, this is definitely great for Whitaker. I know she's happy, one less person to weigh in on. She's probably so relieved to not have to tell Bruce Harvey to stop talking to the other side of the courtroom. She was always ready to go after Harvey. Oh my gosh. Yeah, YouTube watcher says he beat a body. And they're still trying to charge someone else remaining on this trial. They're still charging for that same body. So, like, think about what that might convey if the jury is able to piece that together. You know? And Chris Cosma, no. So because this is RICO, is everything related to Nichols now out of the case entirely, or does that evidence still apply? It'll still apply, same way that we've heard tons of discussion on things that really only involved people that pled out or severed co-defendants. It'll still be on the table. What might change is if he is going to testify, there might be different issues of cumulative presentation, right? Because previously there was a confrontation clause because he's sitting there. But if he agreed to testify to certain things as part of his whatever, I don't know if they're going to call him. I've got to read this because we've got this. I mean, this right here is a great deal for every person in that room, if you ask me. It might not be better than him not pleading out at all, but the idea of someone pleading out, you know, someone could have pled out and it's the client's choice. Someone could have said, I'll plea out and I'll say whatever you want me to say at this point. And that's not really what happened here. So let's see. Chloe Alberts-Revenge says, Georgia RICO. Get some posts, some social posts, some statements, some pictures, some hand signals, shell casings, but not blue flame that I kept calling blue shell, and whatever else. Swallow it and regurgitate it onto the record. Lazily investigate a crime and string it all together in trial. Yeah, and what's even funnier about this, Chloe Alberts-Revenge, is so many times I just think back to the reading of the factual basis for Munktung's Alford plea that Love was just reading out loud in court. Just oops. And for a prosecutor to do that just shows how much that this is really how they're pursuing this case. Just look at the posts, look at the statements, fit it together even if it really doesn't fit together. Even if we haven't verified that it fits together the way we think it does. Just create enough, circumstantially, that the dots could be connected. And just hope the jury agrees with the connections that we've made. And unfortunately, I think that's how a lot of prosecutions go down. Not all, but a lot. Thank you so much, Chloe Operative for the 10. Floyd says, this seems like a good deal for the defendant because of all the drop charges, but am I missing something? No, I personally think this is a great deal for Nichols, and surprisingly, I don't think it's that bad for the remaining co-defendants. I mean, as far as what could have been the worst for the remaining co-defendants, if that's up here, I think we're like solidly down here. Might still be on the screen a little bit, because I don't know what the jury will make of a missing person. A co-defendant that's suddenly not there. But it could have been here, and it's not. Again, my take there. And yep, Carolyn speaks. The plea was only that there was enough to substantiate the RICO. So Bruce Harvey said, you know what, we're willing to acknowledge the 2017 drug event, the 2018 drug event, where we had, paraphernalia and baggies. But we categorically deny use of violence, basically everything else. So, and he made it clear that they're denying the things that are in the factual basis that Hilton was reading off. Yeah, Marlena Mack, they're going to have to explain the missing defendant to the jury, but how? You guys in the chat, do a mock exercise, whatever can fit in a YouTube comment, right? So I don't know if it's like less than 200 characters, but give your one-sentence jury instruction for the jury to ignore or what to do about Nichols no longer being a defendant in the courtroom. Let's just see what you guys come up with. Be as humorous as you want to be. Also, big shout out again. Thank you for the 20 there, Floyd. Very nice of you. Gwen and Garnett, was Thursday's mistrial motion ever ruled on? No, and I don't know if we're adjourning today, what we're going to get with... Because Carton Matthews said that he wanted to join the motion on behalf of Mr. Huey. So I don't really know. I'm assuming it's going to end up being kind of moot, denied, whatever. So, but technically we haven't heard Whitaker say something about it yet. So we'll probably get that tomorrow. Also, as far as the timing, because I don't know the math and I would put more faith in Thugger Daily for it, Nichols is receiving time credit for 31 months served. He becomes parole eligible after 40 months. So there we go. Oh, STS, this freeze up an emoji. Do I have a Bruce Harvey emoji? I don't even know. Oh man, I gotta look at my own channel sometimes. If there is a Bruce Harvey emoji, we can swap that out. Good pointing that out though. Thank you, STS. Y Turner says, put in the plea that the state cannot mess with them either. I'm sick of them. Right? Keep them away. Don't have people sitting in the bushes with their binoculars. But they won't, guys, when you're on probation, I mean, if your PO wants to be looking at you, they'll look at you. And unfortunately, it is what it is. It's part of the agreement. So, but this is absolutely true that I think if the state wants to mess with somebody, they can find easily a way to do it. The interesting part to me, again, is that null pros for the counts that the jury was already sat for. Null pros is kind of like, if you do good and you complete the terms of this plea deal and you've finished your probation without any violations, we're null prosequi this for now. We're not going to prosecute this, and it'll go away. It'll be done if you complete the terms of this agreement. But I don't really see how, if there's a violation here and the state then wants to say, hey, we actually do want to prosecute you for the things we decided to null pros while you were already seated in a jury trial. That just sounds like double jeopardy. But I'm not an attorney and I'm not familiar with how that would work in Georgia, so I don't know for sure. Just common sense seems like that's a problem. Yeah, I like OG Cappy. Hey jury, hope y'all refreshed and had a great weekend. Remember to stand up and stretch if you need to throughout the day when we have breaks. And never mind the empty space in the back right corner. Maybe the jury can't really see all the way over there anyway, so they'll just be like, it's fine. They won't notice. That's a good one. Thank you for the superhero, OG. Fletch says he might regret a plea when the next 6 motions for mistrial in the following months finally result in one. Fletch, I think this is a good point. How much longer do you guys think we can go before we get another significant motion for a mistrial? So, yeah, and this is really how I feel, Craig. Like, the jeopardy applies on the swearing in of the jury. I don't think that can be waived. So the null pros just seems like terminology, but it can't really be used here in the same way when someone takes a plea before trial starts. So, yeah, you guys are saying 2 business days, 24 hours, 2 weeks, 3 days. The state will mess up again. And maybe, because isn't Nichols facing time for something else? Like maybe he figured, all right, let me just start the clock, take this plea deal, get out of there now, and maybe it'll coincide with whatever I've got to do anyway. So the risk of missing out on a possible mistrial in the future, it's a net zero. Doesn't really matter. So that could be one thought process. I'm not in Nichols' head. But again, at the end of the day, the decision is the client's. And Kyle here, perfect question here. How much more jail time does he have to serve? So we've got that up on the screen with Duggar Daly doing some math for us. So credit for 31 months served, parole eligible after 40 months. And then I think the math is 13 years probation as long as there's no necessary revocation there. So we'll have to see. I can't wait to read the filing itself. I will check the portal. But let me check Thugger Daily. Yeah, no plea uploaded yet. And then Jennifer Devine with the summary here says he pled to selling drugs on the corner with his friends. What the state calls it is not my business. His paperwork is clean, so prison will be okay for him. And that's the thing, right? They got him on 2 counts. It was found. It sounds like they searched the vehicle both times, and he had the baggies and drugs and paraphernalia. And he pled previously to these 2 things, but they became part of this indictment again. I don't really know. But Bruce Harvey mentioned that he's already pled to those instances, the 2017 and 2018 instances. So it's kind of like we already have some type of disposition on those 2 in a different matter. We might as well concede that here to give the state their wish to get a guilty plea on count 1, and we get out of here. So I think this is the crossroads that already existed. We'll just get something in return that works out for my client. Great summary here, Jennifer. And then I think this is Nyax. So sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but Nyax OTSD says, question, do you think a lack of money, great question, and or the stress of family life played a part in the plea? I see no reason for him to accept. I think the bigger burden is what he could have been facing if the jury found him guilty of something. And you've got to consider, like, a lot of the sentiment in the chat sometimes is, all right, but some of this seems like other people were doing things, but it doesn't really fall on Jeffrey Williams, on Young Thug. So what if there was something in the back of Nichols' head? Let's say Nichols wants to maintain his innocence. I didn't do this. I want to fight for my innocence. But I believe that the jury is going to, have rose-colored glasses that Jeffrey Williams and maybe Diamante Kendrick are innocent. And I'm not going to get the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to be the one that maybe the jury thinks I'm the knucklehead that was acting independently and getting these other guys roped up and stuff. And I'm just spitballing that, throwing it out there because it's something I've seen expressed as public sentiment. And if you guys out there are wondering, maybe the others are guilty, but not Jeffrey Williams, it's possible that Nichols was sitting there thinking, look, they're going to make me the fall guy. The jury is going to think that Jeffrey Williams might not be at fault, but surely someone else is. And I don't want to take the risk of being the one that gets the guilty conviction on things that are carrying 5 to 20 years, 15-year consecutive sentences, the murder charge, right? So part of what was going through his head could have been, I might not have inherent favor with the jury. I don't have celebrity status. I got to weigh that in my risk. You know, you never know. I think this, ultimately, I think this deal, I don't know what his motivation was for taking it, but I think it was a good deal for him. Peter Ortiz says, since Quay's attorneys took a plea, the motion for mistrial is now moot. I hope there is justice for the victims. And I agree, but don't forget, and great to see you, Peter. Thanks for coming over here after checking in the Detective Viverito reading. Don't forget the other Quay, the other Quay, Marquavius Huey. His attorney had said, we want to join that motion for mistrial without prejudice. And we didn't see him take a plea today. So that's still up in the air. But yeah, obviously, Miss Westmoreland, she was the first one to say, yes, we would take a mistrial without prejudice. That's off the table. They're done. So great point here. And very curious, you know, I hope there's justice for victims. It seems like the family members are speaking their mind that they don't think the Shamel Drinks murder was properly investigated. And, you know, I respect how families feel, even if I disagree or not with what the family thinks of somebody's guilt. But in this case, I certainly agree with what I'm hearing the family members express about Shamel Drinks, that they don't think the state really cared what they were doing, that they properly investigated the death of their family member. So in this case, I align, and I wouldn't judge them either way, even if I disagreed, because I'm not in, you know, you can never know how someone feels or how they come to their decisions when it's a victim, someone that experienced someone else being a victim in their family. STS says, mistrial. Hilton says, hold my beer. Hold my beer. Yeah, it's like, hold on, please. Instead of this mistrial, just please give us count one. Just give us something with count one and you can have whatever you want. Oh, man. I always love a good hold my beer joke. And Elizabeth Wright, I don't think this applies in this case. The Harvey rule still applies, so they all adopted the mistrial motion. This was an instance with a specific opt-in. So I don't think this is true. There was a specific opt-in requested of the attorneys, and only 2 opted in. So I know the Harvey rule is a thing in this case, but this was an opt-in situation here. Fletch says he might regret a plea when the next 6 months. Yeah, we did this one, but it's still true. He might regret when there's actually a mistrial with prejudice down the line, because it just seems so inevitable. AK says, if I'm on the jury, I would be asking what kind of case the state really has if they keep releasing people. Who's truly guilty and of what looks bad? And, you know, I understand that plea deals are kind of commonplace in RICOs. You want to get the bigger fish. And we all think that they want to get the bigger fish here, who they've determined, through whatever basis, is Jeffrey Williams. Maybe a couple of the others are the bigger fish. But usually you see those plea deals kind of work out before trial starts and kicks off. So this just seems like oops, oh my gosh, we have to let somebody get on out of here with a really generous plea deal, in my opinion. Because that was a big oopsie that we made. And we don't have much leverage. We don't have much we can work with. And like Bruce Harvey said, we know we're willing to agree that there's enough evidence to substantiate for count 1. Because of the 2 other, you know, drug incidents that there's a prior plea for Nichols. But we categorically deny everything else. So, that's powerful. Great, you got someone with drugs and baggies. There's your count 1. Let's see. Gina D, Naval Academy mom. Awesome. Thank you for the super sticker. Angie Lay is out here sprinkling with gifted memberships. Thank you so much. And then I see in the chat here, Gorf is saying, why is Hilton talking so much? She was reading the factual basis. So she was going through all the stuff that they wrote out as the basis for their offering a plea and what they had against the defendant who was taking the plea. She was just reading that all out. Norma Jean says, it can seem like he's gonna win this to us. But did you watch the River trial where those kids attacked that man and he got life? Okay, so I get what you're saying here. It seems like Nichols and maybe the other co-defendants, oh, this is a clear win. Why would you take a plea? But Norma's saying, well, did you watch the River trial? And Norma's saying, seemed clear to me that the kids attacked that man. But he ends up getting convicted and he gets sentenced to life. So, and was it actually a life conviction or was it just so many years because he's already older in age? But whatever it is, he's going to be, in all likelihood, spending the rest of his life in prison. And this is a great point, you guys, just because we say, wow, my gosh, clearly they have a win on the horizon. Why would you take a plea? That's dirty. I mean, you can't predict a jury. You can't predict a trial outcome. So this is a great example here, Norma. Sorry I struggled reading the first sentence, but I think I got what you're trying to say. Yeah, KC Dog says he might just, want to get out of Rice Street. The Fulton County Blues. Don't tell Shannon Stillwell that he can ask this man about why he wanted to get out. I don't even know if Nichols was, I think he is, right? Nichols is held in Fulton County still, but is he in prison because of a different adjudication, or is he at Rice Street? Either way, I think there's a large number of problems with multiple facilities. But especially Rice Street. Especially Rice Street. Yeah, no, Kirsten, this is a great point. And this is what's so paradoxical about this type of trial and the way the state is running it. If count one is true for one, doesn't that make it true for all? Silly that just because they are charged together, if one is found to have done something, all have done it. But that is the impression I have. And remember, we're still waiting on that argument, like, if, there's just one overt act, and maybe that's outside the statute of limitations, can the jury legally find the defendants guilty on count one? So we still have, legal questions up in the air while this case is ongoing. Oh, man. And big questions, too, because, that count one is the number one that the state wants the conviction on. Emmanuel McRae says, at what point does intentionally lousy jail conditions, involuntary immunity, and plea deals, and motions for mistrial rise to unconstitutional issues? I don't know. And the sucky part is if this ends in a mistrial, we're not going to get to, appeals arguments that could become, binding case law, set precedents. But on the flip side, of course, if there's something that's violating someone's constitutional rights and we get a mistrial in the moment, that's the appropriate outcome for the individuals. So I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're rushing. I saw a news article that the Fulton County Sheriff is suing the county commission for more funding for probably Rice Street. But we'll see what they do with it. We'll see if they can get that funding and what they do with it. I don't really expect conditions in the jail to improve anytime soon. So that's another thing that can be held over somebody's head when the state is looking for plea deals for their own gain. So. And Lottie B says, will the Harvey rules still apply without Harvey? Yes, it will still apply unless, I guess the defendants could come in and their counsel could say, look, since there's fewer of us, we don't really see a need for the Harvey rule, so we'd rather specifically opt in or opt out for every motion moving forward, right? And the court could say, okay, no more Harvey rule. But technically, we haven't heard them change that, so the Harvey rule it's just what they're calling it. So we will still have a Harvey rule, even though Harvey's not in the courtroom, unless they change that. Good to see you, Lottie B. Violet, and happy birthday again to Violet. My heart's for all of them. Yeah, rough thing to go through no matter. I might say I think this is a good deal for Nichols, but I mean, what a week. Probably a roller coaster for everybody involved, and a roller coaster continuing after today for sure. And Violet says, Lord be with them and hold them in your arms. And I have a personal read, but you know, I know guilty people swear they're innocent, and I know innocent people will falsely confess to crimes due to different reasons. But in general, I kind of question the people that may rush to take a plea deal and get up on out of somewhere. Sometimes they might, one of those motivating factors might be they did what they're being accused of and think there's a greater risk. When they're weighing the risks, they feel the risk of going to trial is greater. So their calculation is slanted because inside they know that they're guilty. So sometimes I think when people might take a plea, sometimes, maybe actual guilt is a motivating factor for accepting a plea. Then those, and I think it's really unfortunate, those that are innocent, when they weigh their calculation, they're like, I'm innocent. How could I be convicted guilty? I didn't do this. So they're inclined to reject a plea deal. And that could be a miscalculation because you can't predict how trials can be risky. But I still think there is a slant when someone who's actually guilty or someone is actually innocent weighs their risks when calculating a plea deal, right? So I do think it's interesting the ones that want to continue the fight in a way that makes me feel like they're really trying to fight for their innocence. At least I believe it a little bit more, right? It's not necessarily 100% conclusive, but this wasn't an unsweet deal for Nichols, and I don't know what was on the table for others, but it just makes me wonder. And this is, yeah, Mark, great point. Call me out. That might be true in a normal case, but this has been everything other than normal. Yeah, 1000%. Nika says, if he committed the murder, it was a good deal for him, but not for the victim's family. But only he knows if he committed the murder. And that's just it, right? He knows. And honestly, whether he knows or not, the family of the victim, I think the family of the victim's entitled to feel how they feel. And I don't give that same pass to regular people, to prosecutors, to police, to the state, hopefully also to people in the jury box, right? But for personally, I feel like if a victim's family member wants to be upset and they believe that somebody's innocent or guilty or somebody else is actually the culprit, I have a different level of, I feel like they should have their space to feel that way, right? But I think this is always a great point. If he didn't commit the murder and he went through to trial and ends up being convicted, that's not really solving the outcome, right? But the family might feel that way. If he commits the murder and he gets this plea where they're not prosecuting, they're dropping this murder charge, and he really did it, or even if the family thinks it, the family might not feel so good about this. So this is like, it's kind of the scales, right? And here the extra layer is apparently at least one of his family members feels like the state didn't do their job properly investigating the murder of their family member, of Shamel Drinks, which, I mean, I think some of the stuff we've seen at trial point to these investigators chasing lyrics and looking to solve something that they weren't able to solve by following the evidence available. They tried to find another way to solve it and see what they could fit back, retrofit to the case. So in that vein, I agree with what I'm hearing about one of the family members and how they feel about the state investigating. So great food for thought here, Nika. Not an easy subject. Jennifer Devine says, Thug can't plead to felony. He can't tour without passport. Felons can't have one. And I know there's like some like country by country basis, but that's just a pain in the butt, right? So big consideration there. You know, you want to continue your lifestyle, your business, your ability to travel. this is a big consideration here. So another reason that Jeffrey Williams might say, nope, we're going to keep going. I'm not going to plead guilty to this. Great point here, Jennifer. Chloe Albert's Revenge says, defendant? What defendant? Just stare into Miss Love's plaid jacket while I read the 754th curative instruction to you. Oh, man. And you guys saw she had the plaid jacket with the yellow sticking out. She did a little yellow for you guys today. You guys always seem to like to see the yellow. Fletch says, do you think this will be a wake-up call for the prosecution? No, I don't personally. Will they get it together or more of the same going forward? I think it might get worse going forward. I think it might get worse. Because, you know, when you have to start, like, walking around, if they feel like they have to walk around eggshells, because the next thing could be the thing that opens the corral to a mistrial with prejudice for all the defendants, and they're all going to say, yes, we want a mistrial with prejudice. Why wouldn't we? Sometimes trying to be more cautious sets you up to mess up or make mistakes or do something klutzy because you're a little bit nervous and tight-wound. So I think even if it is a wake-up call, it could make them mess up more just for the nerves. Whether I think they'll actually think it's a wake-up call, I don't know. I don't really know how much self-reflection some of the state prosecutors do. But not Rico, says, what are the Rule 22 requirements or rules, or are they upset because they keep us informed? So I'm not exactly sure on the specifics of why that was, but we could pull a Rule 22 application and read it if you want. Whitaker's basis, her argument was that something in the courtroom that was being recorded wasn't supposed to be. So, all right, we're going to 11 alive. And I assume this is Bruce Harvey about to talk. Let's see. Oh, and I gotta mute their song because they'll get me. So I'm gonna have this up, but I am gonna have it muted because they have a song that puts a claim on it that plays. But we'll see. As soon as we see someone come up to the microphone. And who knows when that will be. STS says, in colder climates, there are people who will commit petty crimes to get 3 hots and a cot. Yeah, well, Atlanta does get pretty cold sometimes, so don't think that that's not a possibility in the middle of winter there in Atlanta, or maybe air conditioning. But yeah, right. The motivation for, trying to get yourself wrapped up just so you can have a roof over your head and a meal, that's a motivation too. Great point here, STS. Yeah, Nita Beta says, Ashley Merchant gave them the blueprint. I mean, I think this was a very different performance than what we saw from Derek Wright with this plea negotiation. And I know I wasn't there in person for either plea negotiations, but from what I can see, Bruce Harvey seems a little bit more like an advocate for his client than we had with Derek Wright and for Antonio Sledge, which really sucks because it seems like, Mung Tung thought his attorney fought for him. Chloe Albert's Revenge. To Hilton's credit, these are the first complete sentences uttered in this trial as far as telling a story. It's shulbit, I like that censoring. But it's full sentences and paragraphs, that's something. And let's see, is he coming up to say something? Turning back around. All right, they gave the guy in the green a moment there. I think he's just pacing. He's certainly just pacing around there. But Chloe, I agree. I mean, you get a full recitation and it's like, hey, at least the pieces of what they're trying to convey line up. Because when they're introducing a theory, their theory of what happened through direct examination of a witness, they don't really keep their incident, the who's, what, when's, and where's, and why's together. They kind of just hobble it all around, and in my opinion, I think they want the jury to say, well, we've heard so much, so clearly some of this stuff must have actually happened, as they say. So we'll just say, yeah. That's kind of what I think the theory is. And then when you hear her read something out, it puts things in an order. And we don't really get that with the witnesses on the stand. And unfortunately for them, they ruled out that Operation Planter's PowerPoint, which told the full story of the Donovan Thomas and retaliatory shootings. Thank you so much, Chloe. STS shares here that some of us have firsthand experience regarding cops lying, because cops can lie. Cops can lie. I was assaulted by a cop I'm sorry. That sucks. But because the cop in question has removed all ID, I couldn't complain. Wow. So you couldn't even say this is the person, or this is their badge number. And that's the thing, right? How do you police are often where an investigation starts. And if this is what we get, how can we just have blind faith? So I'm sorry that happened to you. And thank you for sharing. And it's one of those things where it's like, wow, and then not surprised to hear a story of how this is something that went down. On the flip side, Pink Slime says, I fought a cop and pretty much got away with it. Well, shout out to that. Was it like a bar fight? Oh, man. Number 16, I love it, says, this case and others got me to rewatch 12 Angry Men. Great movie. Oh, I think, is that Shoddy? Right? Is that his name? For Atlanta Journal-Constitution that just walked by? It kind of looked like him, just judging from what I've seen of a small profile picture. Colleen says, am I the only person who is going through severe trial withdrawals? Well, I think we'll be back tomorrow, right? And guys, just to explain that, actually, let me finish this. So Colleen says, so grateful for this community. Free thug, let's go cat, slat, and chat with the glee face and the slimer. Love to see it. Thank you so much for being here. And guys, just so, in my opinion, this should be day 152. We had an actual, some type of proceeding, right? Court went into session. We didn't go into session on Thursday, Friday, or yesterday on Monday. But these feeds are calling today day 152. So tomorrow, I think, will be day 153. And I'm going to follow my naming schematics, even though I don't structurally think this is the consistent way to name the days. I think tomorrow should be day 152. I'm going to follow the other streams. That way, as an archive, it all lines up. So tomorrow, if you see day 153, I want to call it day 152, but we're going to go with 153. But yes, so Colleen, I think you will have trial tomorrow. Fear not. Fear not. Oh, and this is an awesome story. So Peter says, a policewoman saved my mother's life. So that's always awesome to hear. And Ms. Kims with another positive message says, good afternoon, sending positive energy to everyone. Love to see it. Always shout out and love to Ms. Kims. Always positive. We need more of that. And while we wait Any updates on X? Um, all right, I just see a bunch of news reporters saying they're waiting to hear. We already got that up on the screen to hear from Bruce Harvey. But yeah, that's it as far as updates on the anything relating to these attorneys and their clients. Every person that pops on the screen, I'm like, is it Bruce? Violet says for her birthday, Rico is hanging out with me. Oh man. You gotta let them have one last hurrah, celebrate big time with you before Rico goes down. Thank you so much for the super, Violet. Oh, and this I'd pulled up earlier. KC Dog says, oh, so I won't get to see Miss Westmoreland anymore. Gotta find other cases, other trials, you guys. Watch some of, and I am interested in seeing, you know, when this case is done and these attorneys get to their backlog of cases for clients that are sitting waiting for them because of this trial taking up 1.5 million days. You know, I think it'd be interesting to watch some of the other trials, other arguments, especially a trial that might be 3-4 days in length as opposed to 2 years. So, Mark Nicholas says, this is what it looks like when the state advocates for the victims. And advocates is in quotes. Jeffrey needs to offer $5 million to the state and see if that does the trick. You know what's crazy is I don't even want to, like, be fanatical about it, but... And I'm not saying that a defendant would offer this, that Jeffrey Williams in particular would offer this. But man, I'm looking at the Sean Williams case over in Johnson City in Tennessee, where it's being alleged an extortion scheme, where cops were allegedly asking Sean Williams, extorting him to send them $2,000 like weekly payments to not bring a case against him for what he is allegedly or was allegedly doing to like over 50 plus victims. So, I mean, it sounds crazy, but the idea of money making stuff go away is not something that's never happened before. And I don't really think that some of the key players in this of the state have the utmost integrity. So I see where you're going, Mark Nicholas. I obviously think that this isn't specifically going to happen, but I also don't think that there's much integrity in the system here. And then Innocent Bystander Channel, holy moly, says, thanks again for help with my YSL video. You are the best. Hold on, did you finish it? Hold on, are you still in here, Innocent Bystander Channel? I am pretty excited. I am pretty excited here. Let's see. And I'm also seeing in the regular chat, guys, the Rule 22 conversation. So there's a modification that's going into effect like by tomorrow for Dennis Byron and Miss Sylvia, where they've got to stream from the media room and not sit presently in the media or the media pool within the courtroom itself. So, and I think there might have been a term that they can sit in the courtroom, but they can't film if they're going to sit in the courtroom. So there was a modification there, not a revocation. But hold on, let's see if Innocent Bystander got his video. Yes, okay. So I am excited. First of all, congrats on getting it done, because I feel like, you know, there was a lot to maneuver into a concise video on something like this. So guys, check out Innocent Bystander. You know, content that goes beyond the YSL trial, of course. But I think you guys will really like You know, I try to stay away from politics, and I know politics are deeply ingrained in, you know, there's elections where you elect the district attorney, right? So sometimes when you talk about trials, politics is part of the system. But Innocent Bystander channel here took the dive into the politics of the YSL trial. And I also loved they used the Brady picture here. We've got the Brady bunch. So I think you guys will really like that. I have to bookmark it to watch myself, but I've watched other YSL content from Innocent Bystander channel. So vouch for me. I give a vouch. Just haven't watched that video yet. We'll bookmark it. Great to see you and so happy that you got it done. And, you know, I had a great conversation with you. Happy to chat about it anytime. I'm over in the chat and I see that reporter is wearing a slime polo. Heck yeah. Oh, man. Oh, my goodness. And where is a shout out to the Fashionably Fit Life? They can sit, but they can't film. Yep, so they can sit in the courtroom. So they're not like banished from the courtroom, but if they want to do any like restreaming with devices, they've got to do it from the media room instead of within the courtroom itself. On the basis, according to Judge Whitaker, that they were, you know, capturing footage while she wasn't in the courtroom. So I don't know if that was just supposed to be pictures of the defendants, or maybe video. I don't really know the specifics there. It might be spelled out in a modification order. Probably a good time also. Let me refresh. As soon as we hear from Nichols, I'll look and try to pull up to see if the plea is... I'm assuming when Nichols is ready to talk, they've handed everything over to the court clerk, and it could appear pretty soon on the docket on Odyssey. We get to watch this guy prep. Kevin Kirksey says, watch Matthews argue the mistrial. He's the only Quay in the room. Also, thank you for the coverage and mod love. Yeah, and what's crazy to me is Bruce Harvey does always say Qua. But when Nichols pronounces his own name, it sounded to me like he said Quamarvious, not Quamarvious. And they had him repeat it for the court reporter, and I listened, and it's like, it kind of seems more like a Quay. So I agree if we go by the pronunciations from the attorneys. But when Nichols said his own name, it wasn't Quamarvious. It sounded like Quay to me. So like, to me, it's just like, gosh, I don't really know. But in any case, if I'm having that confusion, I think either attorney can make the argument that the jury could think it's my client that is in custody being referenced by this free Quay hashtag. So also, thank you for the mod love shout out there. Shout out to the mods, especially holding it down. You know, this chat was up for a while and mods did an incredible job holding down. You know, people were coming into the chat, hearing what they heard somewhere else, and you know, mods were holding it down, making sure like, hey, we don't actually have that verified yet. So shout out to them. Big work that they did this last couple of days. Oh, and Biff. So there's a couple that I like for different reasons. But there's one called What's the Move? That was the song that we always put on first when we were about to take a trip to like I used to do event promotion and we'd carpool to the further away events. And that was like one of the first songs on the playlist. So What's the Move always reminds me of those times. So for that reason, that's one of my favorites. That is one of my favorites. Chloe Albert's Revenge, Seagram's Ginger Ale is number 401, 402, 403 in my Jobs vending machine. I only buy the 403. And if you want to add some 7s in the mix, you could get some Seagram's number 7. I have that. Oh, can you hear me, guys? Do you guys want me to switch? Hold on, I can switch back to, I mean, I didn't switch. I can switch back to the Plan A internet. All right, so if it conks out, I can switch over to Spectrum. Just let me know. And I won't hit my power extension cable that turns the whole computer off this time. You know, while we wait, I'm just gonna pull up the look on Odyssey really quick. All right, so still nothing uploaded there. And then let me... All right, so I'll do this on a separate window. That way we don't, you know, I still have this interview stream queued up. Let me see where love was shown. Okay, hold on. I think this might be the part.
You have 4
Was it
years
this
for
part?
that to file a direct appeal. You have 30 days from the date of sentencing, which is going to be today. And you have until the end of this term of court to file a motion seeking to withdraw your guilty plea. That doesn't mean anything like that would be granted. You would have to establish facts that would warrant that. But that's just the time period is until the end of this term of court. Do you understand those as well?
Yes.
All right.
Your Honor, if this case were to continue with trial, Your Honor, the state would expect, as to this defendant, the state would expect to show that what has already come into evidence that on July 3rd, 2017, as well as October 23rd, 2018, that this defendant is an associate of the enterprise of YSL, also known as Young Slime Life, and that he conspired to associate together with others for the common purpose of illegally obtaining money and property through a pattern of racketeering activity and conducting and participating in the enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. In furtherance of the conspiracy, this defendant engaged in the activities below. He engaged in activities that assisted with preserving, protecting, and enhancing the reputation, power, and territory of the enterprise through acts of racketeering activity to include murder, assault, and threats of violence, that this defendant preserved, protect, and enhance the reputation, power, and territory of the enterprise by the posting of messages, images, appearance in videos, and songs demonstrating allegiance to the enterprise and a willingness to engage in violence on its behalf, and to obtain money, weapons, and other property through acts of racketeering activity, including the unlawful sale and distribution of drugs. Your Honor, evidence has come in during this trial that on July 3rd, 2017, Mr. Nichols was located at 2612 Steele Avenue, which is in the Cleveland Avenue sector of the city. Your Honor, he was found inside of a vehicle. When that vehicle was searched, Your Honor, this was in October of 2018, they found marijuana as well as sandwich baggies that would be used to package drugs, and there are also guns found inside of that vehicle. Also in July of 2017, this defendant was stopped during a traffic
notes.
stop in the Cascade area, Your Honor. After being stopped, Your Honor, there was a consensual search of the vehicle that yielded powder MDMA, Xanax, as well as a loaded gun inside of that vehicle. Additionally, Your Honor, in July of 2019, Mr. Nichols was featured in a video with another YSL member, Shannon Stillwell, and Woody Lee. In that video, it was entitled Slap Talk. And in that video, co-conspirator Shannon Stillwell, while performing, makes such quotes as, "Me and my slimes are above the law." We know from the evidence that slimes is one of the terminology used by members of YSL to refer to themselves or other members of this enterprise. And then last but certainly not least, Your Honor, that in March of 2022, Your Honor, Mr. Nichols was found in surveillance video at a gas station at Windsor Street and Fulton Street here in Atlanta, Georgia. This was on March 14, 2022, during what the state would believe to show an onset of a gang war that really started in 2015 with the death of Donovan Thomas, but carried on into 2022. In February of 2022, a rival gang member by the name of Rayshawn Bennett, also known as YFN Lucci, was stabbed at the Fulton County Jail in February of 2022. Information about that stabbing was made public at the early part of March 2022, around March 3rd of 2022. Once that information was released to the public, there was an onset of retaliatory activity that occurred between March 3rd, 2022 and March 16th of 2022. That includes a March 11th homicide of YSL associates Christian McMiller and Darius Ford. It also then included a retaliatory shooting of a YFN associate, and then ultimately it led to a murder of Shamel Drinks, who we believe is a YFN associate. This murder occurred again on March 14, 2022. Mr. Nichols is seen on surveillance video at that BP gas station that I just referenced earlier. He was at the gas station with YSL co-conspirator Shannon Stillwell. Mr. Stillwell was driving an Audi vehicle. Mr. Nichols came to that gas station in a Ford Fusion vehicle. You see both of them on camera together. While they are at that gas station, Shamel Drinks approaches that gas station as well. I think unbeknownst to Mr. Drinks, Mr. Stillwell was still in his vehicle, which is the Audi. At some point in time, Mr. Nichols got into his vehicle, the Ford Fusion. Once Mr. Drinks finished his business or finished handling business at that gas station, we know that there's a phone call between occupants of the car that Mr. Stillwell was in and occupants of the car that Mr. Nichols was in. That communication was to the effect that you need to get on FaceTime. As soon as that conversation ensues, we see Mr. Drinks leave the gas station in his vehicle, and both the car that Mr. Stillwell is driving as well as the car that Mr. Nichols is driving both follow out of the gas station, following behind Mr. Drinks. Mr. Drinks proceeds down the street to the light at Windsor, which is right by I-20 in Windsor. Mr. Drinks is in the far left lane. The car involving with Mr. Stillwell pulls up to the middle lane, and Mr. Nichols' vehicle pulls up to the far right lane. This is all captured on surveillance video and surveillance camera. They are at the light for a moment. Then we see both this car with Mr. Stillwell as well as the car with Mr. Nichols drive through a red light, leaving the car with Mr. Drinks sitting at that light. About 30 minutes later, a Good Samaritan sees that car still sitting there, approaches the vehicle, and Mr. Drinks is now deceased inside of that vehicle. We had know through LPR readers that both Mr. Stillwell's vehicle and the car involving Mr. Nichols drive in the direction of 20 westbound and follow in tandem. 2 days later, when after the case is investigated and arrest warrants are taken out, on March 17th, 3 days later, Mr. Nichols is found with Mr. Stillwell at a Chick-fil-A gas station, Chick-fil-A restaurant. There is a chase, I won't call it a high-speed chase, but there is a chase through the city of East Point, and eventually Mr. Nichols as well as Mr. Stillwell are both apprehended after arrest warrants were ultimately taken out for the murder of Mr. Drinks, Your Honor. Given where we are in the case, Your Honor, we know that Mr. Nichols, we do not believe Mr. Nichols was in the vehicle in which the shooting occurred, but he was in this other vehicle. The state has made a decision to move forward with this recommendation for the RICO count, Your Honor, for count one.
Mr. Harvey, are y'all acknowledging a factual basis to the count one, the RICO count?
Okay, we are acknowledging a factual basis. There has already been evidence with regard to the July 3rd, 2017 drug event, the October 23rd, 2018 drug event. We categorically deny and contest any use of violence by Mr. Nichols. We don't agree to that underlying factual basis. We believe those two predicate acts that were committed by Mr. Nichols without any question are sufficient to meet the elements of the offense. The offense to which he's pleaded to, which is a RICO conspiracy. A RICO conspiracy requires proof that the defendant either conspire with another person to violate one of the substantive provisions of RICO, and that would be drug offenses, or personally endeavor, I believe that's what the language of the statute says, to violate one of the substantive provisions.
Well, that's what the language of the statute says, but
Yes.
he is indicted in this indictment with conspiring, not with endeavoring.
That's correct. So we're talking about a conspiracy. We acknowledge the two events that he participated in. We categorically deny any other allegations other than those two events that are sufficient for a factual basis. We categorically deny that we participated in any way in the unfortunate death of Mr. Drinks. We categorically deny any other charges to which we are, substantive charges to which we are not entering a plea, and that includes gang charges. This is a plea solely to a conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. So that, but yes, we acknowledge a factual basis to that extent, Your Honor.
Understood. All right, thank you.
Your Honor, we just have one additional thing to say.
Go ahead.
The factual basis regarding the nature of YSL is that the evidence has shown and will continue to show that Mr. Nichols conspired with others to participate in Young Slime Life through a pattern of racketeering activity, and multiple defendants and unindicted co-conspirators have committed overt acts to further this conspiracy, including drug sales, aggravated assault, and murder.
She is holding her head up, like
asserting the violent nature of and assertive dominance of Young Slime Life, also known as YSL. And that concludes our factual basis.
And again, once again, we again categorically deny those representations. And again, the only thing that is necessary to meet the factual evidence of a 1614-4C is proof that the defendant conspired with another person to violate one of the substantive provisions of RICO, and that is subsumed by the drug offenses that have already been proven in this case, and to which Mr. Nichols has previously pled.
All right, thank you. Understood.
And Your Honor, now approach with the waiver of rights form.
Yes.
All right, so there you go. That was hilarious. Like, She was like in her neck holding her head up there after that exchange. I didn't notice that the first time. I saw her giving the looks. Oh, man. And we will toggle back over. I was checking. We didn't have the presser go down while we were rewatching that. So we're still waiting to hear. Also here, I love this. I think this is such a great, a great summary, at least if we go back to 2015. Chloe Albert's Revenge says, did they indict all of them on murder just so they could drop it in a negotiation? It seems like they treated this case as if they were haggling on an old infinity. Oh, man. Now, which kind of old infinity, and did it have a sunroof? Oh, the camera's adjusting. And I have the sound off on this because they're playing like some like corporate sounding background music track that YouTube's copyright ID picks up. But we will put it live as soon as there's someone, hopefully Bruce Harvey here speaking. But I don't know, you guys. We're about to hear a presser from someone that, after 151 days of trial and multiple requests denied for severance, got a plea deal for his client for count 1, null pros on everything else. It seems like he'll be eligible for parole, and you guys are the math, 9 months. And no special conditions. So he didn't really have to be a snitch. I guess you could say, like, pleading guilty to count 1 implies that others must also be guilty because conspiring involves more than 1-2 people. But I don't know, Bruce Harvey kind of made a record there of why that's a bit ludicrous that a substantive act of selling drugs with somebody necessarily could mean RICO. But yeah. Oh. What are they doing? Oh gosh. I mean, let me double check that it wasn't like a 2-second presser that I missed. Hmm? I mean, maybe if, like, Fox 5 Atlanta has a feed. Let's try that. Oh, okay, they're back on this feed. Okay, and I don't even see Fox 5 Atlanta live, so we'll stick with 11 Alive. So, Son of Sun says, I think him pleading guilty hurt Shannon. But he didn't plead guilty to... I mean, like, technically, yes, it's RICO, but with the predicate acts of the drug possession for 2 different instances. Not for the Chamel Drinks shooting. Yeah, and I think, so for clarification on the 9 months, I think that's just the math of this, you guys. So parole eligible after 40 months, but he's already getting credit for 31. So the 9 would come from this math, if that's how it works. And Andre Cook says, the thing is, the way he pled leads me to think that this is double jeopardy. I mean, I think double jeopardy is like a big question in and around this case. Raphael Vimore. So Nichols took a plea, no special conditions. And Hilton basically read the factual acknowledgments out in court and then tried to expand a little bit on, the basis for certain angles when Bruce Harvey said, hey, look, we just want to be clear. We are conceding to count 1 with predicate acts relating to 2 different drug possession charges. But we categorically deny everything else, including the Chamel Drinks murder, all of that. And no special conditions is huge, right? I mean, they can call him to testify, but he's not signing off that he agrees to testify that XYZ is true or that it happened or slime means gang, like whatever. So we are waiting. I saw somebody ask. So hey to Kaylee, will you be watching the attorney speak? We're just waiting for Bruce Harvey to get on out here and talk to us. Wait, so I don't know, this kind of looks like paneling. This stuff? I don't know. I am not an expert here. I mean, this, if you ask me, looks a little different from this block down here, but maybe that's just because wear and tear. Water can pool up down here. I'll defer to the expert witnesses on the subject matter in the chat. Yeah, and Ancelot says stone. Oh, and also shout out, as usual, to the Honorable Thugger Daily. If you guys want to watch a clip of Love losing her mind about the Harvey argument, he actually clipped that portion. So if you want to bookmark it and do whatever you want with it, here's a link to that from Thugger Daily. And I keep seeing this sentiment too, but he pled to RICO. That will hurt the rest of them. I mean, it's just a +1 because there have been other pleas to count 1. There have been other people that pled to count 1 with special conditions that they had to come and testify and tell the jury that, yes, YSL is a gang. So, someone pleading and admitting guilt to count 1 isn't anything new in this case. And whether a +1 moves the needle, I mean, if they're going to call Nichols and try to put him on the stand, I think the defense is going to just eat that up. I mean, look, another plea deal, and you had murder on the table for you. So talk about the pressure being on. And when you took the plea, you had you were eligible for parole after 9 months from that point in time. Okay, this makes sense. Andrea says they're saying it's not a scheduled press conference. They just set up in case an attorney will speak to media. So that kind of makes sense there. No weapon formed against me says this is a delay for Page to fix the state's error. I mean, if you ask me, I think Nichols' team and Nichols, because it's his choice, rather than this being a delay, I think that they were actively negotiating this. And that's not to say that there weren't any negotiations for others, but I think that the counter negotiations might have been pretty intensive here for Nichols. Not because I think Nichols was saying, all right, we'll agree to this, but can we change this one thing? But because Harvey probably kept reiterating with his client's approval, and Westmoreland, and I forgot the third attorney's name. They said it twice today. The Nichols team, probably like they're trying to counteroffer, wiggling it a little bit, and the Nichols team is like, nope. And then, we try to wiggle it a little more. Will you at least agree to this? Nope. Will you at least agree to this? Nope. Until finally, they just did what they did. Garland, thank you so much, Angela. Shout out to Angela. And Obi's got it. Chloe says, these witches would indict Girl Scouts for selling cookies to diabetics. Oh no. And don't they have some sugar-free varieties now of Girl Scout cookies? And Love would invoke civil forfeiture and make jackets out of their uniforms and take all the cookies. They would seize all the cookies. And could you blame them? Could you blame them? Oh man. Thank you, Chloe. And the green jackets, the green Girl Scout jackets. A little bit of slime going on there. This guy's packing it up. He said, I'm out. I'm out. The Fashionably Fit Life says, just happy one of these men has been able to resolve this. Let's pray and hope he takes advantage of his second chance. Hopefully there will be programs to help these men when they get out. And I just flipped over. I see some, Thin Mints are also green. But this is a interesting point because as far as I know, Max Shart he tries to be actively involved with some organizations for youth, giving the space and the access to productive hobbies, gathering at rec centers to play sports with other friends, and creating good environments. So I think there's a lot of initiatives, and if they're surrounded by people that are aware of the initiatives, I think this is something you might see some involvement in. I know Gunna and Jeffrey Williams, so Sergio Kitchens and Jeffrey Williams, they've done a lot community involvement, including, raising money for helping people pay their bond when they can't afford bond. So I think there are a lot of good programs and initiatives. What Nichols does individually, I think it'd be nice to see something positive. Always, right? Yeah, a lot of the chat, sugar-free cookie, sacrilege. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think I think the state was in a tight spot because there could have been this mistrial. They've got to retry it. That would have been horrible news. It would have delayed the other stuff. If there was a mistrial, in this case, it had to be retried. There would be a change in circumstance to put bond motions forward for these defendants, probably also the defendants that are severed but still awaiting their trial in this indictment. Just a big mess. Someone almost just tripped over one of the microphone cords there. Got a little action on the screen. The most excitement so far. Oh, man. Great point, Finding Good. Hoping that the money for the programs actually got to them. Because I'm trying to think, I don't know the name, but the facility that they built, the center for the youth, never actually opened. Yeah, and there should be court again tomorrow. My assumption is it won't be a jury day, or at least the jury won't be there early on. Nance a lot with the classic here says, enjoy your trip, see you next fall. Guys, so I don't know if this is, they're just having us linger here. And shout out to Ben Petro, dropping a sticker. Yeah, we're loitering. Touche says, hey everybody, I'm late. Any deals besides Nichols? Nope, they adjourned after they went through Nichols. So that was that. And if you missed it, no special conditions. And some great arguments from Harvey. I think it's actually worth the watch. So, yeah, I'm sure, guys, if I'm going to drop the link to this presser. I know sometimes it takes some time for pressers to start. But if they don't pop up, I'm going to check one more time to see if we have anything coming through on Odyssey. But we can wrap this up. I don't really enjoy just like sitting and let the time fly. I mean, we could rewatch it and look at it maybe on lunch during tomorrow's court stream or whatever. And it's like 3:30 right now. I think we're on like page like 67, 70 of 136 of the Viverito transcript. I don't know. I don't know if I want to like go and do a reading on that because it took us about 2 hours to get through the first half. And I've got work I got to start doing around 6. I don't see the plea up here. But as soon as I see it, I'll share it on X and as a community post on here. And all right, for whatever reason, they blacked out the screen on 11 Alive. So, all right, so yeah, I think this is just standby, guys. So I'm going to drop the link if you guys want to keep watching and see if someone comes and speaks. But I think we'll wrap it up because there's no point in just sitting here on this like this. Yeah, and they're cutting to this now, so who knows. Happy to see you guys, though. It's been nice, either this stream or over in the transcript reading for Viverito. It's been nice to chat with you guys. It's been a hectic and uncertain couple of days, so that's been nice. But other than that, see you tomorrow for what seems to me like a non-jury day of court, right? So, I think 9:30 in the morning. See you guys then. And do you guys want to be redirected anywhere? Is Lead still on? Who's on right now? Lead is still on, so let me see. You guys want to go over to Lead? They might watch the presser. That is a long stream. That's almost a full court day. Hold on, let me set up this redirect. And also shout out to, anything that's going on, even if it's another trial. Let people know where they can go and watch something. This is what we do when we round up these streams, wind them down. But I can only redirect to one place, so. All right, so this is set to redirect over to Lead. I might catch you over there for a little bit. I had a call from one of my clients while I was on the stream, so I'm going to call him back and then probably hop over to Lead's chat. Anything else you guys want to shout out? Yeah, Sal's not on until 6. It's always his universal start time, but is that Wade Wilson again? So I'm going to drop the link there to Dolly Talks, and that will be more on the Wade Wilson really appeal at this stage and some of the simping jail calls. So there's a link to that since that doesn't start until 6. There you go. There you go. Okay, well, potentially... I saw he was live, so he's doing a different topic. I saw he was live doing YSL Pleas also. So he's covering April Imholt's omnibus hearing. That's in relation, guys, if you've been following what's going on with Nick Rekieta, the Pope of LawTube, covering live stream trials. April Imholtz, this is part of that whole saga. But also, I'm pretty sure potentially Criminal did a stream on the plea, and he might have great insights. So here is potentially Criminal if you want to check out either of those. I didn't realize he went live again. So there is that. Actual practicing attorney, love Sean. And there you go. So, and then at 9 p.m., thank you for sharing the link. 9 p.m., almost past my bedtime, but I try to watch while I'm winding down for the night. Flesh of the Gods, great friend of the channel, presumably YSL content, so make sure you come join us there, 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. There we go. Okay, yeah, so I remember I saw him live and then he wasn't, so there you go. Yes, Flesh of the Gods tonight at 9 p.m., you guys. And right before we cut out here, OG Cappy says, I know Nichols have been gone for 31 months. Would that be another additional 41 or another month that will make 41 months total? So I think they're looking to hit that 40 total served, and he's at 31. So it seems to me like he's 9 months away from being eligible for parole. So that's my answer there. It could be wrong. And, being eligible for parole, got to see how that actually plays out when he gets to ask. So there we go. Oh my gosh, I didn't know Flesh of the Gods hit 3K. Okay, we're going to be celebrating over there. I'm going to come drop some gifts. There you go. I got what you meant, OG. I got what you meant. It happens. But there we go, guys. When I end this, it should bring you over to lead, and I'm sure AV to the 7th power is still over there. So see you guys over there. I think I got to end it through YouTube. It always breaks when I do it through StreamYard. Because, why not? But thank you guys all for tuning in and hanging out. It was lovely. See you again next time, or see you over in Leeds if you come on over. Bye, guys!